So Xander, if we can, yeah, there we go. So do we have all the participants made as panelists?
Yes, all 4 of them should be good to go. They're all on right now. Yep.
Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for attending today's event. And so we kind of shift gears a little bit, and then we move on to the OU alumni panel discussion. So basically, it'll be an informal discussion, kind of talking about career opportunities in analytics, and all 4 panelists are OU alums. And so Mark Guthrie is the director of IS&S and the CIO of General, which is located in Auburn Hills, Michigan. So I meet with him all the time, grab coffee and kind of chat. He's also heavily involved in the School of Business Administration. We have a program called Achieve, and so he helps out with mock interviews and kind of talking to students, and so it's a wonderful program, and Mark is quite active in the program, and so thank you, Mark, for your participation. And then we have Gene Grabowski. He's the Principal Solutions Architect and Data Scientist at SAS Institute. And so Gene graduated from the School of Business with a degree in econ, and so he's going to talk a lot more about his career progression. Thank you, Gene, for participation. And then we have Avanti Tatiraju. She is our graduate student in the MSITM program, in the analytics program. So she's currently working at Henry Ford Health Systems, and so she's going to talk a little bit about her career progression as well. And then we have Amy Siebert-McKenzie. She is actually a biology student, and so she's currently doing Post-Doctoral Fellow. And so welcome all 4 of you. And so for the audience, basically, all the 4 panelists would have about 5 minutes or so to kind of introduce themselves and then talk a little bit about the organization that they're working for, and what kind of analytics projects they are involved in or kind of have knowledge of. And so after the 5-minute talk, then we will have a Q&A session. So I have a few questions that I have prepared. I will ask maybe about 3 or 4 or so. And then simultaneously, I would strongly encourage the audience to type in your questions in the Q&A box. So up top, you will see a chat, and make in the Q&A box so that I can kind of monitor and ask those questions. You can target it, address it to any particular panelist, or if it's a general question, then I would ask the panel to respond to, or I could even make a suggestion as to who might be the best person to respond. Does that sound good? Like a good plan? So first, I would like to invite Mark Guthrie to introduce himself and a little bit about his organization, particularly from the lens of data analytics. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. Quick audio check. Can you hear me okay? Are we good?
Yep.
Outstanding. Just make sure. Vijay, and thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate the chance to be part of this panel, and just impressive qualifications from the other panelists. I can't wait to hear from each of them as well, but thanks for the opportunity. So, yeah, as you mentioned, 2-time graduate of Oakland University, and currently the CIO at AM General. We're a defense contractor headquartered in South Bend. I happen to be based out of the Technology and Engineering Center right around the corner from Oakland University, which makes it convenient for me to be on campus from time to time, as you mentioned. I was thinking back, it's interesting, when I was getting my undergrad in computer science, we weren't talking about data analytics in the 80s. I think the closest we came is I earned a concentration in applied statistics. I think maybe that was my introduction, at that point in time. And my gosh, look how far we've come. And even the earlier speakers with this event, I just think it's so important for Oakland University to be hosting this kind of an event and bringing in the qualified speakers and the content already that you put in place and what will follow this panel. So fast forward, 30 years later, companies like AM General, and we're not alone, have really begun to realize the value of the data that they have at their disposal for decision making, and we're no different in that regard. In fact, next year we'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary, and so realistically, I could say we have 5 decades worth of data in various repositories and sources and legacy systems, and so the challenge that we all have is to unlock the information that resides within that data, both structured and unstructured, which is why it's become so increasingly important, and it is for us as well. No company wants to admit anymore that they're data rich and information poor, because the importance to use that data for decision-making information or information for decision-making. As I thought back over the last several years, the conversation has progressed. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, we were talking about business intelligence. Even 6 to 10 years ago, it was all about data warehouse, and now we've evolved, and now it's data lakes, right? And bringing in both that structured data, which is more traditional, instead of upgrading all of our legacy systems, because that's very costly and time-consuming, both in terms of resource and money, is to be able to leverage the information sources in those structured environments, those legacy systems. But now it's beyond that. It's unstructured data as well, and we've got to bring those into the data lakes and really focus on the means and mechanisms to be able to access and combine and really sort through that data and translate it into information. What are we doing at AM General? So I would say that we started modestly, and for example, last couple of years, and now we're getting more momentum, and really now planning more into the future as to making this a dedicated investment. But we started, like many companies do, with some basic robotic process automation for some standard finance transactions, right? Just improve productivity and efficiency for repeatable tasks, right? That's a pretty standard or simple application. Late last year, we introduced an industrial Internet of Things pilot. So we took a little bit of a step forward, and we did some things in our warehouse and distribution center to monitor pick and pack performance and display it on boards to create visibility and awareness and change how we route the people in the warehouse to improve efficiency. And it became a little bit of a gamification opportunity, as well as different stations saw how they compared to others. Similarly, we worked in our manufacturing facility. We had a constraint in the system, what we call our Big 4 rivet machine. And so we applied sensors to capture data from that machine to help us monitor throughput, as well as identify opportunities for proactive preventive maintenance. Now what we've moved on to is we have a very large fleet of vehicles that we track outside of our facility, and so we're using simple sensors and GPS to be able to track those vehicles in terms of locating, but also we're obligated to operate them on a regular basis to make sure we're capturing those events, right? And so it's allowed us to improve how we manage the fleet, as well as to remove some of the manual effort involved in the staff to just manage that work. I mentioned unstructured data. I'd like to just mention one of the areas where I'd say just exploring is natural language processing, NLP. We typically receive, as a defense contractor, documents that may be, hundreds of pages, and we have to manually and tediously get through those documents to extract the information that we need to be able to move forward. Natural language processing is a great technology to apply in that use case, and so that's something that we're exploring as well. And then the last one I mentioned for us, and it was referenced a little while ago, is digital twin, right? So it helps us in manufacturing and engineering to run simulations, to look at opportunities for proactive preventive maintenance. And so we're partnering with a technology provider to put that in place at our facility, both here from an engineering perspective and in South Bend at our manufacturing location. Where I'll leave you off then is I think clearly, not only from an IT perspective, but our business partners understand the importance and the investment in this capability. And so we've now, we've made it a standing placeholder in our budget for the next 5 years. Roughly about a third of my discretionary project investment is in data analytics and digitization and other innovation and emerging technologies. Thank you.
So, Gene, over to you. If you could give a brief introduction, that'll be great. Thank you.
Can you see me?
I don't think your camera is on right now, Gene. So if you find your name in that list, you should, there you go. I think you just clicked it on.
Okay. Can you see me right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Very good. Well, very good. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Gene Grabowski, Principal Solutions Architect, Data Scientist. My academic background had my undergraduate bachelor's degree was in economics at Oakland University. I have a master's degree in economics from Michigan State University. And my focus is when I look at the market for analytics today, I always look through the lens of supply and demand. Now, my title is a very long one, but it really boils down to what we would call pre-sales, meaning that when SaaS or any other software company attempts to sell software, it has an account executive go to meet with customers, and if those salespeople need technical assistance, a subject matter expert, they'll call on people such as myself to come in and meet with the customer, promote ideas, fashion a solution, and then ultimately help them implement the solution. So I've been with SaaS approximately 8 years doing this type of work, but I've been a SaaS user for about 25. So meaning I've seen the evolution of the marketplace for analytics over many years, and even the terms that we talk about, data science, analytics, even data mining, still are relatively new, and their adoption is relatively recent. And I think the person that really attributed the growth of this was an individual named Tom Davenport, whom I got to speak at a presentation with Ford Motor Company a number of years ago. So what happens, we see a very broad market. We saw a lot today. Actually, Courtney is an associate of mine at SAS, and she did a very good job of promoting image recognitions and things like that. But what mine brings to the table is really saying, what are companies actually using today in the marketplace? And for students in particular, how can they benefit from this knowledge and fashion their career and understand? Because I think the challenge is what happened is there's many good analytic tools in background out there, but how do organizations physically implement analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence? For example, we see in the marketplace, in the many companies that I deal with, is that computer vision, similar to what, once again, Courtney had shown, but we see manufacturers using it on the production line to identify defects. We just heard about natural language processing, but there's also natural language understanding, natural language generation. Organizations such as Ford Credit and others are developing chatbots. But I think the greatest area of growth is we see things of what we call recommender systems or sequence analysis. We see those with Netflix and Amazon and others. So you're seeing all these tools being used in the marketplace. And once again, the demand is very high. But what's happening is we need to provide people from our universities to train them and prepare them for these jobs and educate them in the right tools. That means learning the math and the theory, learning programming languages of various flavors, and then learning, probably most importantly, are the deployment of these tools. That is the single greatest area of research and work that I get, is how do I build these models, such as what Courtney maybe had shown, and how do I integrate that within my organization? So I think what happens where I come from is from an automotive background, primarily Detroit area, Ford Motor Company, GM, Toyota, all of the automotive manufacturers, I've been to them on site, have sold products to them, and their captive finances. So it's a very broad range of organizations. I've also dealt with companies such as Caterpillar, John Deere, Dell, Samsung, Apple, others. So what I'm once again saying is I see all these companies, how they're operating and how they actually use analytics in the practical sense. And when I follow up is just that this concept of a solutions architect, the demand is almost infinite across manufacturing, health sciences, financial services, the public sector, others. So it's really an area of growth, and I would really encourage our students and people that are exploring analytics to learn more about this in things such as business understanding, communication skills, being able to go in front of an audience and communicate these concepts. I think these are the things that I see quite a bit being across the country and meeting all these customers. So with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, Gene. So now we move on to Avanti, Tatiraju. If you could introduce yourself and say a few words.
Sure.
Your company. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. I hope my audio is clear.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you. So, yeah, my name is Avanti, and I work in the Access Technology Department at Henry Ford Health System. I graduated from Oakland University with a master's in Information Technology Management, concentrating in business analytics quite recently. In my current role, I work as a Salesforce consultant, and I've been in my role for 3 years now. In the context of healthcare, which is increasingly data reliant, data analytics is helping us derive insights to improve patient care. My department at Henry Ford, we focus on improving a patient's front door experience. And for this, we use Salesforce to collect and analyze the data. We support various departments through our organization, of which 2 major ones are the contact center and the referring physician's office. In the contact center, each patient interaction that an agent has is stored and recorded in Salesforce through a case that they fill out. This is essentially like a form that captures details like whether the patient calling us what they were asking for, like whether it was a prescription refill or an appointment, and if it was an appointment, if it was a successful or unsuccessful, all this data that we capture is stored within Salesforce itself. We also have a wide knowledge base that is built in Salesforce, which helps the agents use this knowledge to improve their patient interactions and, improve the patient experience. The referring physician office, they use the data within Salesforce to track how many referrals they are having from outside organizations by specialty, and this helps with new patient growth and acquisition as well. Each department that we support within Salesforce is segregated by its own app. This helps us make operational decisions not only at the department level, but also makes it easier for us to segregate the data and manage it as well. But having it all in a central repository like Salesforce also helps us look at the larger picture and make decisions at the organization level as well. So this data from Salesforce and other applications that we use like Epic, which is our electronic medical record system, is pulled into a data warehouse. And then we use data visualization tools like Power BI to build a dashboard. These dashboards helps us look at trends, identify patterns, and manage resources accordingly. For example, we are currently using the data from the contact center to make decisions on the clinic hours of operation and to justify offering non-traditional hours of operation to patients for particular specialties, like it could be like cardiology or something. Another example is reducing no-shows to appointments by tracking the reminders that we are sending to patients. It helps us identify trends and decide on things like what the length of the message should be or the frequency and how many days before an appointment should the reminder be sent. So a future project that we have on the roadmap is predicting patient utilization patterns, which again, it helps us manage resources, reduce costs, improve patient experience as a whole. This is how we use data analytics in our department and organization. So like I said, Salesforce is how we use and collect and record all this data.
Thank you. Thank you, Avanti. Now we move to Amy Siebert-McKenzie. If you could make a brief comment, and then we will get to some questions.
Mute.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yep, very good.
All right, thank you. So again, my name is Amy. I am presently a postdoctoral research fellow at the Blood Research Institute at Versity here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so I am a three-time graduate from Oakland University, where I obtained my bachelor's degree, master's of science degree, and my PhD in the Department of Biological Sciences. And my PhD work actually was with Dr. Randy Westrick, who was the first moderator for the first session. And so in his laboratory, we studied the genomics of thrombosis and hemostasis. So currently in my postdoctoral fellowship at the Blood Research Institute, I'm using some, or doing some, or working on some projects that involve some big data analytics. And I will say that from the basic science perspective, at the institute that I'm at, it is almost impossible to sit through any lecture or any talk given by anyone from the outside or, coming to our institution without having to have some sort of knowledge of big data science. And at the Blood Research Institute, which, as its name suggests, primarily focuses on blood, a lot of that work details analysis at the single cell level. So I will say that from my experiences of working at the BRI, one of the things that I've really started to notice is just how much of a collaboration this is. And it usually involves specialists on the biological level, such as the physiology or the phenotypes that are being presented and the factors that are involved, to the bioinformatics specialists as well as the biostatisticians. And one of the things that is pivotal for the success of these projects is effective communication skills between these three different specialties, where each one needs to have an understanding of what everybody else is doing in order for successful interpretations of the results to be concluded. And so one of the projects that I'm working on specifically involves, first of all, I should say, is also in collaboration with Dr. Westrick here at Oakland University, but it involves trying to understand a developmental brain defect that happens when there is a mutation in a gene that actually inhibits clotting, or blood clotting. And so in order to answer some of the questions about this phenotype that we see, we basically need to start looking at what is happening in these pathways, or in specifically in the transcriptome within these developing embryo brains. And so with that, we need to actually start breaking down the transcriptome profiles onto a single cell level. And so that takes, it's a bit of a challenge when you have something, even though it's big data, it's coming from something that's very, very small. And so when you're trying to analyze the transcripts of, let's say, just one specific cell type in the brain, such as endothelial cells, some of the challenges that you arise is that you might have a lot of data, but it might not be enough to tell you specifically whether things are significantly upregulated or downregulated. And so that's one of the challenges that we face, that we're, again, creating the best pipelines on the computational level as well as the best statistical models for this is something that needs to be it's kind of basically a challenge for us right now. And so we're kind of working on that, and that's why it is so important that we, all take a look at this field. And yeah.
Thanks, Amy. So I have a couple of quick questions, and then maybe we'll take some questions from the audience. So the first question that I have is, so you all graduated from OU, and so are there things that you wish you learned while you were here and also, what you learned, how is it helping in your career selection? Just briefly, just so that, students that are on the call right now can get a good sense of, what to focus on moving forward when you go for career opportunities.
I'd like to answer that because I think, one, I had a very good education and once again getting a bachelor's degree in economics at Oakland University. And what I thought was great about that is I had a broad exposure to statistics, econometrics, forecasting, business, public speaking, and just kind of a broad understanding of writing and communicating. And that was really the thing that really, it was data science in its very basic form many years ago. And I think what I do today is really a foundation was formed at Oakland University using those skills.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you mentioned, we have now sort of the formal business analytics curriculum in our business school, at least, and we are starting to work on some university-wide data science certificates and things like that. So a question to Mark, maybe. Mark, can you talk a little bit about the need for sort of, software skills, since you're involved in the Achieve program as well. Now, how important it is to have sort of the software skills and also entrepreneurial kind of thinking. Can you comment on this a little bit, please?
Yeah, Vijay, and sure. And I mean, thanks for pointing out the Achieve program. In fact, I just had a session yesterday, and it applied now Zoom and the ability to do breakout sessions. It was really a great use of technology. So even though it was all virtual, I still got some really quality time with 4 students. And every time I have the opportunity with the students, and I've been part of that program now for about 7 years or so, I just encourage them to take advantage of the resources available to them at Oakland University and the School of Business Administration, not necessarily just in their vertical discipline, but really, to expose themselves and look across other areas that they may or may not realize that they'll make use of later. I like what Gene said. I really enjoyed my macro and microeconomics courses back in the 80s, and I'm glad I had that foundational understanding. Those are the things that, like finance or accounting or marketing or organizational behavior, get exposed to those classes because you want to be prepared to be able to be adaptable and flexible. And I think the School of Business curriculum does a great job allowing you to do that. And in that manner, the Achieve program creates an opportunity for interaction, like professionals like myself and my peers that have different disciplines of expertise. The mock interviews you mentioned, the resume writing, there's a big focus on LinkedIn profile and networking, obviously. But back to your question, I believe that those software skills, it's not so much necessarily that you know how to code in a particular language, but that you can demonstrate the ability to pick up and learn, technology based upon maybe some common themes, right? That you demonstrate, you have that adaptability and flexibility because, I learned COBOL when I was an undergrad and I used it for a little bit of time, but, you don't hear anything about COBOL anymore, right? I mean, and it's such a dynamic space. Your ability as a student to be exposed to as much as possible, take advantage of the resources, presents you then to an employer to say, okay, so this person's got breadth of understanding, they've got some depth in particular areas. I know that I can train this person because they've demonstrated the ability to be able to master a number of different areas. And so I'm going to bring them in and put them into a rotation, right, that exposes them to different areas so that they can see what they enjoy and mutually we figure out what that value proposition is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, students kind of broadening their horizon, it's always a good thing, taking courses in other units and then kind of getting a broader perspective obviously helps. Another question to Avanti possibly and Amy as well. So what kind of skill sets that you picked up at OU is helping you currently, and what you wish you had done while you were here.
Sure. I'll go ahead and take that first. Some of the skills that I learned at OU were, since business analytics was my concentration, I learned SQL, Python, R, Tableau, Power BI, and these are some of the skills that I definitely use in my day-to-day work. Honestly, I cannot think of anything that I wish that I had learned. All these skills that I learned, these are what helped me land this job and, helped me progress in my career as well.
Yeah. Amy, you have, anything that you want to add to the discussion?
Well, I would definitely say that some of the things that are skills that I've learned at OU was critical thinking skills, as well as I had a lot of exposure to writing and effective communication, or developing effective communication skills. And those are definite assets and are necessities for the field that I'm in. So I would say that I can't really think of anything that a skill that I did not attain at OU, and actually my mentors might be the person to ask that about more so than myself. So.
Okay, very nice, very nice. So another quick question is, are advanced degrees needed, in order to secure an excellent career? And so, we have a lot of undergrad students, that are kind of starting to look for jobs and stuff. And so, is an advanced degree important in your perspective? I know you've completed your PhD. And so, would you recommend that, particularly in the sciences, I guess, this is more relevant?
So I would say that I do know several people actually that work in my laboratory now, or the laboratory that I work in now, that only obtained a bachelor's degree. So I would say that there's the ability to have, a job without the degree, but I also know that there's only so much, I want to say, climbing of the ladder that you can obtain. And so that would be kind of the perspective, or thinking about what is it that you really want to do every day for the rest of your life? Like, what do you want to achieve, in the long run, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, from now? And so that would be my thoughts on the higher education.
Okay, very good, very good. Yeah, absolutely. It depends on long-term career plan, obviously, right? Another question, probably for Jean and Mark, is, there are a lot of certifications that are available, micro-credentials, and so in the industry, are they recognized? If so, to what extent? And are there some specific certifications, particularly in the analytics space, that you would recommend? Because there's, all kinds of certifications available now, and so just your thoughts on some of that.
Yeah, let me jump in there because I just completed one this past June with the Andrew Ng, Stanford University Machine Learning, and I do highly recommend that one because it is a balance of theory, of math, and programming, and practical insights. And I definitely feel that these certifications, you see them with Microsoft, Amazon, SAS certainly, so they're all out there, and they're great differentiators along with a graduate degree. I do think in the data science field, at a minimum, I do recommend exploring graduate degrees at the master's level primarily. But I do think all of that is, what are you trying to do? Every industry is different, of course, but what are you doing to separate or differentiate yourself as a person in this marketplace?
Right. Mark, do you want to say something?
Yeah. I mean, Gene hit it spot on, right? It's the differentiator, and I think he's best equipped to talk in this field of data science. But I'd apply it across the board, right? So if you're an information security professional, right, you're going to want to have certifications in that space. Or if you're wanting to go into network administration, right, getting certified on Cisco equipment, it's a variety of certifications. Actuarial science. One of the students yesterday in the Achieve program talked about the actuarial science certifications, 2 of them before graduation, and so that's actually built in as part of the curriculum. But yeah, I support and encourage because it makes the student more marketable and more attractive from an employer who may be looking at multiple candidates, and I think that's something where Oakland University excels in preparing its students accordingly.
Yes.
Yeah. Avanti, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the skill sets that are in demand right now, maybe from the healthcare sector? Both maybe Amy and Avanti can kind of respond to this question.
Sure. Like I said, so currently the skills that I use in my job every day are like SQL, Python, R, and I feel that these are the skills that are in demand as well right now, and not just for healthcare sector. They make data analytics so much more easier than it seems, and you know, it makes it easier to visualize data, to identify patterns with these skills. So I would say data visualization tools like Tableau and Power BI, these are the ones that are in trend right now. And of course, we use Salesforce as well. So yes, that's what I would say.
Okay. Amy, from sort of the bio side of things, you know, what do you see in terms of skill sets, you know, particularly if someone wants to kind of, you know, start their own company, for example, you know, what do you see?
Well, it's definitely say for starting your own company, there's that entrepreneurial skill set that is kind of a requirement. I definitely would agree with Avanti that some of the programs that in the language she's brought up, such as Python, they're definitely skill sets that right now even I'm having to teach myself slowly over time. And so, and I think that that's kind of where the biomedical field is kind of transitioning to, where right now those kind of skill sets are considered an asset. And it's possible that they might become a necessity to future precision medicine and everything, so.
Right, yeah. I have a specific question for Mark, since he has some experience working in multinational companies. So these days, you know, a lot of companies have operations in India and China and so on and so forth. So what is your recommendation for students to be successful in working with international, you know, based teams, you know, as part of a collaborative team, for example? Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what would it take to be successful based on your experience? I know you have worked on this topic for quite a bit. So.
Yeah, sure. And I think I spent almost 17 years with Delphi, and to your point, I had team members in each one of the regions, and we necessarily had to collaborate pretty effectively for consistency in how we delivered services. I think obviously, if a student you know, comes equipped with you know, a second language, obviously that's an asset, right? And you can target companies that have locations in those particular areas where you speak the language, and it might be a great internship opportunity just to demonstrate the value that you can bring. You might find yourself not only involved in working with those other regions, but maybe even the opportunity to travel and to take an assignment abroad potentially. I guess that would be the other thing is, to the extent you have the opportunity, you know, if you can explore a study abroad opportunity, just to get exposed to different cultures and different ways of operating and doing business, that also is an asset, and it's a differentiator, quite frankly, on your resume when you're interviewing for a position. From an academic perspective, you know, I think that, you know, an international business course, you know, and you know, and I don't know what the exact courses would be, but anything that talks about global economics, right? Those would be nice electives to take, just to show that you have an awareness for the fact that, you know, a company you may end up at may be you know, multinational or have a broad footprint, and so you let your employer know by virtue of some of that academic that you're open to flexible assignments, which may mean working or being in other regions.
Yep, exactly. Thank you for that. So we just have a couple of minutes left. So are there any more questions from the audience that I can ask? If not, I'll give sort of a minute to each of the panelists to kind of provide some closing thoughts, any practical advice that you want to give to our current students, as
Sorry, this is Fabia. I posted a question in the chat. For some reason, I couldn't use the Q&A.
Oh, I see. Okay. Can you just go ahead and ask it, though?
Yep, sure. So I think one of our panelists, I think it was Jean, mentioned LinkedIn. And that kind of got me thinking about what is the role of these social networks now, these media networks in finding a job that matches your background or what you are interested in, and how would somebody go about learning how to use these networks effectively?
Well, it's a very good question. LinkedIn's a very good system. I kind of avoided it for a period of time, but I definitely recommend it for looking for jobs. I'm not in the market for a job, but if I were, that would be the #1 source. And I think building a network and getting people to comment and explore and seeing what they're doing, it's just a version of just expanding your typical network. We call it a social network, but I think those are areas where you could learn or get input of the critical skills that are being required, find many jobs in many industries globally, and find out, and then from there you can shape your own specific attitudes and opinions towards really what you want to do professionally.
Yeah, Vijay, and if I could add, I mean, for the students that are part of the Achieve program, you're going to hear about that consistently from the time you're a freshman until graduation, and it's going to come up time and time again. And I think now that some of the professionals offer LinkedIn sessions, how to set up an effective profile and how to make the most out of your LinkedIn portfolio, right? But everything Jean said I agree with, and that's usually one of the questions I ask with each one of the students I spend some time, whether they're freshman, sophomore, whatever. How's your profile? How would you grade your profile? And what steps can you take to make your profile more appealing? Because employers really use that as it's one of their primary sources of recruitment, quite frankly.
Right. I was just going to say, having a good digital profile is so much more important these days because it's so easy to look for information, so gone are the days when you send in paper resumes and, wait for the call back. So now, you can have a very, good digital presence, and that'll take you noticed, by your potential employers. And then so that's a good question. And everyone, we encourage, our students to have, projects and have a good portfolio, so that, when you go for interviews, you can talk about stuff, people can verify it and things like that. So it's very essential. So in the interest of time, I'm going to ask every panelist to take about 30 seconds, not more than that, to kind of provide some parting words, so to speak, to our students. So let's keep it brief in the interest of time. Yeah, maybe Mark, I will start with you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, put me on the timer. Hey, students, I mentioned it earlier, take advantage of the resources that you have at your disposal. Work with career services, reach out and get to know your instructors. Your instructors may play a key role as references for maybe, not only your first job, but maybe 10 years down the line. So nurture those relationships, start your networking now, and leverage the great resources within the School of Business. I always say now, Jacqueline Fortier in the Achieve program, Sherry Kirby previously, should be one of your best friends and one of your primary contacts. Thanks again for the opportunity.
And Jean?
Yes, once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think, particularly for our students, it's a very simple process. Learn the math and theory behind machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning. A lot of it's rooted in calculus and linear algebra. From there, learn programming as an option, as a skill, Python, R, others. But most importantly, where the market is clearly going is being able to take these models and systems and learn how to deploy them. meaning how they work within industry, within a particular company or government entity. That is where the demand is, and that's the differentiator. So whether you're getting it from undergraduate, graduate, or certifications, that combination is the area to go, in my opinion. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Avanti?
Yeah, I agree with Mark. Oakland University provides a great set of resources, and I would suggest students to use them to build their foundation on the skills that they feel that they are necessary and that are in demand right now. And I would also like to add that not only, the learning doesn't stop at the university, it's continually evolving, and you would have to keep up with all the changes that are happening these days. So that's what I would suggest to the students. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Amy.
And I'm just going to say I actually agree with everything that everyone has just said. Also, that the comment that I have is that it is a competitive world out there. And one of the ways that I tend to look at it, which might be helpful to you, is that if you look at it as your number one opponent being the person you were yesterday, where you're always trying to improve yourself, improve the things that you know, improve the things that you can do, it tends to be somewhat successful, if not successful. And thank you. Go Grizzlies.
Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists for a wonderful discussion. And so, it's great to have, alumni come back and then talk to our students. And so I greatly appreciate the time you shared with us this morning. And so with that, I will close this session and then hand it over to Flavia to